The living room was lit too brightly for laughter that sharp. My brother leaned back on the sofa, grinning as if the world owed him comfort. My parents echoed his chuckle, a chorus of easy dismissal. "Your brother will just stay at your place a while," Dad announced, tapping the rim of his glass. "It's only fair. He needs somewhere steady." Mom folded her arms, adding with that half-smile that never quite reached her eyes, "You've always had space to spare. What's a few weeks?" I stood there, hands brushing the keychain in my pocket, the same old brass key I had once thought unlocked security. Its weight felt colder now, like carrying a lie. I cleared my throat, steady but low. "Funny," I said. "I haven't lived there for 6 weeks." The air shifted. My brother's smirk faltered for the first time all evening. Mom's voice cracked, trembling as though her throat caught on the words. "Wait, then where exactly have you been staying?" No one blinked. Even the ticking wall clock seemed to hesitate, waiting with them. I thought of the motel curtains, thin as paper, where I had counted cars passing at night because sleep was too expensive. I thought of the silence of borrowed couches, of polite smiles from people who never asked how long I planned to stay. But I didn't answer her question. Not yet. Instead, I looked around the room, the family photos on the wall, glass frames that gleamed as though proud of a harmony that no longer existed. I wondered if they noticed the irony. They were laughing about giving away a house I had already lost, not to them, but to their silence. My brother's hand reached for the keys on the table, presumptuous, almost casual. I placed mine over them, the brass digging into my skin. "Some things," I whispered, "aren't yours to hand out." The room fell into a hush, so complete I could hear the hum of the refrigerator down the hall. That brass key in my palm, once a symbol of stability, now felt like a shard of glass. It had been mine, then theirs, and now no one's. I lifted my eyes and smiled faintly. "Have you ever had family cross your boundaries? Let me know in the comments." And as their questions circled me like vultures, I held on to the silence, because silence, I was learning, could be the loudest form of truth. The key pressed harder into my hand. Maybe one day I'd tell them where I'd been, but not tonight. Mom's voice hovered in the air, brittle and unfinished. "Where exactly have you been staying?" she repeated, softer this time, almost pleading. My brother scoffed, leaning forward. "She's bluffing. Probably just trying to guilt us again." His hand brushed the keys on the table as if ownership was already his. I let the brass key slide back into my pocket, its edges carving a quiet ache into my palm. The action alone tightened the tension in the room, like pulling a curtain over a window mid-sunlight. "I'm not bluffing," I said. My tone was calm, almost conversational, but my chest burned. "You're asking me about a house I haven't called mine for weeks. You're too late." The silence that followed was unbearable. I caught the faint hum of the ceiling fan above, the way its blades carved through the air with steady disapproval. Dad cleared his throat, not to speak, but to fill the emptiness. My brother broke first. "So what, you just what?" "Walked away." His grin returned, but thinner, almost desperate. "You're dramatic. Always were." I tilted my head. Maybe. Or maybe I learned that being quiet is cheaper than explaining myself to people who never cared to listen. Mom's hands twisted together, her bracelets clinking like nervous bells. "But why wouldn't you tell us?" Her eyes darted between me and Dad, searching for support. None came. "Because you weren't listening." That was the answer. But I let the words dissolve in my throat. Instead, I gave them a decoy. "Do you still wear that perfume, Mom? The lavender one?" She blinked, startled, glancing down at her wrist as though the scent might betray her. Sometimes," she admitted. "I thought so," I said quietly. "It's the same one that clung to the furniture long after I'd packed my last box." Her eyes glistened, but she said nothing more. The room no longer felt like home. It felt like a stage, their lines rehearsed, mine improvised, all of us stumbling toward an ending no one wanted. The brass key weighed heavier, no longer a symbol of access, but of exclusion. My brother laughed again. Too loud, too sharp. Fine. You gave it up. Your loss. Don't expect sympathy now. I studied his face, memorizing the arrogance, the entitlement. Maybe not sympathy, I replied, but don't mistake my silence for weakness. His smirk twitched, just slightly, and in that brief falter I knew he was more unsettled by my quiet than by any shout. The key warmed in my palm, as though waiting. The laughter he forced into the room didn't last. It cracked, thin as glass, and then dissolved into the awkward air that smelled faintly of burnt coffee. Dad shifted in his chair, leaning forward with the kind of authority he believed was final. Enough of this. You can't just walk away from responsibility. That house was part of your duty to this family. The word duty clung to me like smoke. I almost smiled at the irony. Weeks of lying awake in a rented room, staring at cracked ceilings while buses roared outside, and only now did they speak of duty. I leaned on the edge of the dining table, my fingertips tracing a faint scratch in the wood. It looked like a scar, one I remembered making years ago when I was clumsy with scissors during a school project. They'd scolded me then too, always the one leaving marks where I wasn't supposed to. This isn't about duty, I said softly. This is about convenience. For you. For him. I nodded toward my brother, who rolled his eyes, sinking deeper into the cushions. Mom's voice quivered. If you needed help, you should have come to us. Not vanish like that. I swallowed. The truth pulsed in my throat. The eviction notice folded in my bag. The look on the landlord's face when he slid it under my door. But exposing it here would feel like handing them ammunition. Instead, I offered another decoy. Do you still have that old photo album? The one with the cracked spine? Mom blinked again, lost. Yes, in the cabinet. I remember how carefully you kept it, I murmured. You never let anyone else touch it. Funny how something broken could still be guarded more closely than your own daughter. Her lips parted, but no sound followed. The brass key pressed against my leg as I sat down, letting its presence remind me I wasn't rootless. I was simply choosing not to let them see where I'd planted myself now. My brother leaned forward, sneering. So where are you then? What couch? What corner? Tell us, so we can all stop pretending. I met his gaze without flinching. Somewhere you'll never be invited. That was when the room truly quieted. Dad's glass rattled against the table as he set it down too hard. Mom stared at me as if I'd spoken a foreign language. And my brother, his smirk collapsed into something raw, almost fear. The key in my pocket no longer felt like an anchor. It felt like a blade. And I knew, sooner or later, it would cut. The chandelier above us flickered once, as if the house itself disapproved of the silence stretching between us. Dad's knuckles tapped the table in a steady rhythm, his voice cold. You're speaking like a stranger in your own bloodline. Don't forget where you come from. I let the words hang, studying the rim of his glass. A crack ran along its edge, thin, almost invisible, but enough that one more pore might shatter it. I wondered if he noticed. Where I come from, I said quietly, is a place where I was expected to give more than I ever received. Mom pressed her hands flat against the table. Her bracelets trembled against the wood. We never abandoned you, she whispered. I laughed, low, not cruel but heavy with memory. Didn't you? 6 weeks ago, when I packed up my things, did anyone notice? Did anyone ask where I was going? Or did you all just assume I'd keep orbiting this family like a moon you never looked at? Her lips parted, but no defense came. Only the shifting of her eyes toward Dad, who refused to meet them. My brother broke the pause, scoffing. You always had a flair for drama. Maybe that's why you're so comfortable with strangers, because you want to play the victim. I tilted my head, the brass key cold against my fingers in my pocket. Victim. I echoed. No, victimhood is silence without choice. What I have now is distance. And distance is freedom. He opened his mouth to snap back, but stopped when he saw my smile, small, steady, unafraid. The photo frames on the wall glinted under the chandelier, faces frozen in happier times. My younger self smiled back from one of them, caught between two parents who seemed proud enough to press me into stillness forever. I wondered if that girl would even recognize me now. Mom reached for me, her voice trembling again. "Where are you staying? Please just tell me." The plea in her tone almost cracked me. Almost. But I held her gaze and answered with a different truth. Where I am doesn't matter. What matters is that I finally learned a home isn't given by family. It's claimed. The chandelier flickered once more, as if punctuating the sentence. And for the first time that night, I saw fear, not arrogance, flicker across my brother's face. Because deep down he realized the house he thought he was inheriting had already slipped beyond his reach. The brass key burned against my palm like a secret waiting to be revealed. The air felt heavier, as though every word spoken had thickened it into something unbreathable. My brother leaned back, crossing his arms. "Fine. Don't tell us. Keep your little mystery. But if you think anyone's going to beg you for the truth, you're mistaken." His bravado rang hollow. I caught the twitch in his jaw, the way his foot tapped nervously against the leg of the coffee table. He wanted control, but control was slipping. Dad finally spoke, low but firm. "We didn't raise you to be this ungrateful. Families sacrifices for each other." Sacrifice. The word scraped against me like sandpaper. I leaned forward, my elbows pressing into the table. "Tell me, Dad, what exactly did I sacrifice for? The nights I stayed home while he went out and you called it balance? The times you asked me to cover his debts because he just needed a chance? Or maybe when you gave him permission to treat my place as his safety net without asking me first?" The crack in Dad's glass caught the chandelier light again, glowing like a fault line. His fingers tightened around it, but he didn't drink. Mom's voice rose, sharp but trembling. "You're twisting things. You make it sound like we never cared." I interrupted, my voice steady. "Caring isn't what you say at dinner. It's what you do when no one's watching." The brass key pressed into my palm until I thought it might break skin. I slid it onto the table between us. The sound, metal against wood, cut through the room like a bell. "This," I said, "is what you're fighting over. A space you think belongs to you. A door you assume you can open. But this key doesn't unlock anything for you anymore." My brother reached for it, instinctively. I placed my hand over his, before he could take it. His skin was warm, clammy. Mine was cold. "Some locks," I whispered, "only open for those who earned them." For the first time, his smirk didn't return. He pulled his hand back, muttering something under his breath. Mom swallowed hard, her eyes fixed on the key. "Then where does it open?" I let the silence answer her. The chandelier flickered a third time. The cracked glass on the table trembled. And in that stillness, they finally realized the home they thought they'd claimed was no longer theirs to imagine. The key stayed on the wood between us, gleaming, sharp, unclaimed. The brass key gleamed under the chandelier, its reflection fractured in the polished wood like a secret refusing to stay buried. No one moved. Not Dad with his glass trembling in his grip. Not Mom with her fingers tightening around the edge of her chair. Not even my brother, who suddenly looked younger than he wanted to be. Finally, he broke the silence with a scoff. "It's just a key. You act like it means something." I tilted my head, studying him the way one might study a portrait, noticing the arrogance painted over cracks of insecurity. "Keys always mean something," I said softly. "They're not just metal. They decide who belongs and who doesn't." Dad cleared his throat, voice low and clipped. "If you've left that house, then you've left it. What's the point of dangling riddles in front of us? Hand it over, let your brother move in, and let's end this." His words rolled across the table like orders, but they landed weak. I saw it in his eyes. The command he once held over me had faded. I pushed the key an inch forward, just enough for it to scrape against the wood. The sound was deliberate, unsettling. "End this," I repeated. "You think it ends by giving him something that isn't yours to promise. You think control is inherited, like dinnerware passed down. But you don't see, this key has already chosen." Mom's voice wavered, thick with something like regret. "Chosen who?" I didn't answer. Instead, I leaned back and gave them a story instead of an explanation. "Do you remember the cracked glass cabinet in the hallway? The one you warned me never to slam?" They both nodded, slow, confused. I kept something hidden there once. A photo of me at 12, holding up my first house key. You said it meant responsibility. You said it meant safety. But what I learned, I paused, meeting each of their gazes, was that keys can also mean exile. My brother shoved his chair back, the legs screeching against the floor. "This is ridiculous. If you don't want it, fine. But don't stand here acting like you're above all of us." I turned to him, calm. "Above you? No, just outside the reach of your hands." The brass key glinted again, and for a moment none of them dared touch it, as if the object they once thought so small had turned into a mirror of their own fractures. The key sat between us like a witness, refusing to take sides. Mom reached toward it, her hand trembling, but stopped short, as if afraid that touching it might confirm what she already feared. Dad's stare hardened, not at me, but at the brass itself, as though it had betrayed him by shining too honestly. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," Dad muttered. "A house is walls and a roof. That's all. You walked away, so let it go." I leaned forward, folding my hands. "If it's just walls and a roof, then why are you all staring at a key as if it's alive?" The chandelier flickered once again, its glow catching the crack in Dad's glass. I wondered if it would break before his pride did. My brother smirked, though the corners of his mouth twitched. "She's bluffing, probably hiding in some rundown place, pretending it's better. She can't stand that I'll finally have something of my own." I let his words settle, then offered him silence, the kind that stretches until even arrogance begins to choke on itself. He shifted in his seat, uneasy. Finally I spoke. "You think this key belongs to that old house, but it doesn't." 3 faces lifted toward me. Confusion, irritation, a flicker of fear. I slid the key back into my palm, curling my fingers around it. 6 weeks ago, when I left, I found another door. A door no one here knew existed. And this key, I lifted it slightly, its brass catching the light, fits only there. Mom gasped softly. Dad frowned. My brother leaned forward, scoffing. "What door? Where?" I didn't answer directly. Instead, I gave them another decoy. "Do you remember that perfume, Mom? Lavender. It used to seep into everything. The curtains, the carpets. But in this new place, the air smells like cedar and paint. No trace of lavender. No trace of you." Her shoulders sank, her bracelets clinking like small chains. "You've hidden this from us," Dad said, voice low, controlled. "No," I replied. "You just never asked. You were too busy deciding what was mine without me." The chandelier steadied its glow, as if even the house was listening now. My brother slammed his palm against the table. "So what? You've been sitting on some secret property. Some place you think makes you better than us." I smiled faintly, almost kind. Not better, just untouchable. The brass key warmed in my hand, no longer a blade but a seal. The room felt smaller now, as if the walls themselves had drawn closer to hear the truth. I set the key back on the table, gently this time, no scrape, no defiance. Just a quiet offering of reality. "This isn't about who gets to sit in my old living room," I said. "It's about who gets to decide what I lose. And I've decided no one here does." Mom's lips trembled. "We didn't mean to push you out." Her eyes softened, almost breaking. We thought you were stronger, that you'd understand family shares. Family doesn't share by force, I replied. Family asks. Dad's voice was gravel. So what now? You sit here acting above us? You keep this little secret and leave us to wonder. I let my gaze drift to the cracked glass in his hand. No, I said gently. You'll never wonder. Because the truth is simple. 6 weeks ago I signed a new lease. My own place. Not a hand-me-down. Not an obligation. A home that breathes with me, not against me. The chandelier glowed steady now, as if the house approved of the revelation. My brother shook his head, laughing bitterly. So that's it? You walked away from us, just like that? I looked at him carefully, letting silence stretch before I answered. No, you walked away the moment you thought my walls, my nights, my sacrifices belonged to you. I just finally followed. The brass key caught the light again, and I slid it across the table, stopping just short of my brother's hand. This is for you, I said. His eyes lit for a second before I added, it opens nothing, because nothing that mattered ever belonged to you in the first place. His smirk collapsed. Mom pressed her hand to her face, tears slipping through her fingers. Dad stared at the crack in his glass, finally seeing it for what it was, the fault line of a family that thought control was love. I stood, tucking my real key, the one they would never touch, back into my pocket. The weight was no longer cold. It was steady warm. Mine. At the doorway I paused, looking back once. A home isn't a roof or walls. It's the boundaries you defend. And I finally built mine. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was accountability. And as I stepped out into the night, the air smelled of cedar and freedom.